What's up, everybody? It is Tuesday, November 30th, coming to you from Eugene, Oregon. We are talking about the wild, potentially craziest ever coaching carousel. I mean, my God, there have been no shortage of headlines here over the past 24, 48 hours. If you're watching live, welcome to the show. If you're watching on replay, thanks for tuning in. Leave me a comment on what you think the craziest move in the coaching carousel has been, and what your thoughts are, and maybe how they affect Oregon. Obviously that's our focus here, but there's just so much good stuff to get into here. We had to hop on. I'm here with Ducks Digest reporter Dylan Rubenking. Dylan, how we doing, man?
Doing great, man. This is it's kind of cool to be talking about something that's not directly just Oregon. It's kind of cool to go national and kind of zoom out and see all the madness going on.
Well, I mean, I know you got your hand in a lot of it over at the transfer portal. You do a lot of broad national scope stuff, but we talked a little bit like right before we hit record, kind of some of the bigger moves. Is there one of these that you kind of wanted to dive into first here while we maybe wait for some more people to show up? Maybe hopefully have some questions.
Sure. I think the one that I've been most intrigued by is the Lincoln Riley to USC move. I think that's kind of the one that stunned everybody and kind of put everybody on edge a little bit. And then the Brian Kelly one just kind of, kicked everybody into high gear. But yeah, I think the Lincoln Riley one was definitely the one that I kind of just tried to understand the most, still trying to understand and just, see what happened there and where Oklahoma goes, where USC goes, how it affects Oregon. That's kind of been, my mindset for the last 48 hours since that came out.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that's a great one to talk about, especially when you're thinking about, a lot of people think that USC is the closest competitor to Oregon, at least certainly in recruiting. I mean, the on-field product hasn't been too great lately. Utah has really been the biggest competition within the Pac-12 over these past couple of years for the Ducks. Ducks gearing up to travel to Vegas this week to take on the Utes in a quick turnaround rematch for the Pac-12 championship. But I think, just off top with this Riley hire at USC, he's that big name. I think when you're thinking about turning around the program and what a monumental task that really is, I think that he's the guy for the job. And I think a lot of people are just intrigued about this because he had it so good at Oklahoma, right? They were just running through the Big 12 all the time. They were starting every season as the, preseason favorites. But I think that a lot of that has to do with moving to the SEC. I think there were reports that he wasn't the biggest fan of that move. You look at which conference is going to give you the easiest or clearest path to the college football playoff. And it sure as heck isn't the SEC when you're going to have to go up against a bunch of teams that are going to out recruit you on a pretty consistent basis. But I mean, God, it's looking like he's going to have everything that he needs, to be successful at USC.
Yeah, I think I've thought for such a long time, and I know a lot of people have as well, that USC was kind of just an elite head coach away from being back to, I guess, somewhat close back to where they used to be, late 2000s in the Pete Carroll, early Steve Sarkisian era. I mean, a lot of people knew that even when they, went to the Rose Bowl and beat Penn State and then went to the Cotton Bowl the next year, it's still Clay Helton. They they weren't certain that success was going to stick around, and it didn't eventually. I think they went 5-7 the year after the Cotton Bowl year. So I think a lot of people have just been like, if they can just get that elite coach, that elite recruiter, USC could be right there again. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily immediate where USC is back. They're, in the Pac-12 championship, college football playoff aspirations and all that. But I think it's going to be a really quick turnaround. And you're going to see what kind of talent he can bring. You're already seeing it. He already visited Raleek Brown, who's an Oklahoma commit. It's pretty incredible to see how he's kind of just hit the ground running.
Got our first comment here coming from Nick. Nick, thanks for tuning into the show. Riley to USC is good for Oregon and good for the Pac-12. I totally agree. I think when you're looking at the profile of the Pac-12 has been the laughingstock of college football as far as Power 5 conferences go, right? For quite a while now. You don't want to be in the situation. I'm sure George Kliavkov doesn't want to be in the situation where you have to kind of ride the success of Oregon, and the success of the conference to a degree, relies on Oregon. That's the word I was looking for. So I think that the fact that you have more than one quality team is definitely going to be pretty good. And that's, I think another big part of it is it's not necessarily going to be immediate. There's a lot of work to do in Los Angeles. You talk about the empty stadiums that the Trojans are playing in all the time. There's been a couple of decommitments from USC commits. You talk about Ephesians Prysock, wide receiver Kevin Green. Those are both LA guys, local guys. So kind of interesting to see that some of those, I think those are the first decommitments since the hire was announced, especially when you look at Dante Williams as the interim. I think that's kind of the big wild card if they're going to hang on to him. But I think that maybe that would be a cool area to dive into here with just the recruiting implications and kind of what that means, because I look at this and I think that Lincoln Riley being at USC makes every West Coast recruit that Mario Cristobal lands at Oregon that much more meaningful, that much more impressive when you think about other teams that he's recruiting against, because SC was obviously always a big brand when Clay Helton was there, but he never really solidified himself as a top tier recruiter among the likes of Cristobal and some of these other guys.
Yeah, I mean, last year's class, 2020-21, that was an impressive one. But like you said, like a lot of the top talent in California specifically, you would see it going to Oregon. You'd see it going even out east to Alabama or Georgia. This is just a really tough state in general to recruit in. And usually you've been seeing USC kind of dominating. And I think I'm not going to go ahead and say like you're going to see that again. That's going to be the case for, the long haul. But, Oregon's still right there in terms of recruiting and geography. I mean, Oregon doesn't look any less appealing because of, USC getting Lincoln Riley. I just think that it makes the Pac-12 as a whole better. As the original comment goes, I think Oregon is better off by playing a USC team potentially in the regular season or in the Pac-12 championship game, because Oregon's going to still be in that college football playoff, debate next year with all the talent they've got coming in and coming back. USC is going to be right there, I would assume, probably at the start of the year. But Oregon, I think any good team that comes into the Pac-12, any team that gets better makes the top just that much better. But in terms of USC, I think, like you said, I think they have a lot to work on. But, with Lincoln Riley coming in, there's going to be a lot of Oklahoma decommits. They're going to come right back down too.
Yeah, you could stay there just for a second. Just people are decommitting left and right from Oklahoma, which is only going to make it harder for whoever takes that job. Stoops was named the interim, I believe, recently. So that's kind of gives them some direction right now in the immediate future. But you got to figure that Raleek Brown's probably going to, re-up with Riley, seeing that he's an LA guy. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But Malachi Nelson, the top 2023 quarterback, he was the guy, the first commit of the Lincoln Riley era. We saw him hop on board earlier today. Top 2023 quarterback, I believe, just behind Arch Manning in the rankings. So super high profile guy, heck of a name to start your recruiting journey with. Getting him back, getting him in the fold, I should say. But if I'm Lincoln Riley, you're looking at the early signing period coming up here in just about 2 weeks. December 15th is when that's kicking off. I got to get on the phone with Devin Brown because that guy was obviously committed to USC before opening things back up amid all the uncertainty and big name schools coming in. Ohio State was one of the schools that is pursuing him, I should say. Playing at Corner Canyon is just an absolute stud. I saw him at the opening, the Elite 11, and he was one of the best quarterbacks out there. I feel like seeing him, and that was my first time seeing any of these guys in person. So I think it was, I was kind of impressed by a lot of people, but he was going toe to toe with any and every quarterback that was out there. So if they can get him back on board, that's going to be huge. And what better guy to do it than Lincoln Riley, who's proven to be an elite developer of quarterback talent. When you look at guys like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, both winning the Heisman Trophy and both being number 1 overall draft picks. I mean, the appeal is certainly there, but I'm right along there with you with just the fact that it's not going to be an instant thing. There's still a ton of work to do just with what he has there. But I could talk about the recruiting stuff for a while if you wanted to stay there.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about Oklahoma for a second. Like you talked about all the decommits that they've had. Obviously, they've had a couple big names enter the transfer portal too, with Spencer Rattler, Theo Weiss, a receiver who is out this year. Austin Stogner, their tight end, just entered the transfer portal not too long ago. It sounds like Marvin Mims might actually enter too. So kind of crazy stuff there. But you just think about like Oklahoma in that head coaching spot now. They have to go through a head coaching search that they haven't done since I think the year I was born. Because when Bob Stoops retired, they just plucked. I mean, Lincoln Riley was already their offensive coordinator, so they didn't really have to do a full fledged search. But now, I mean, look at what this is in front of this program. You have a team that's still kind of in national championship contention for next year. Obviously, they're out of the college football playoff this year, but I mean, they're still going to have a lot of talent coming back next year with Caleb Williams and there's running backs and a lot of the recruits that might still stick around for next year. And then you have to keep them in contention and then also prepare them to get into the SEC. In my opinion, I thought Oklahoma's best chance at a national championship was while they're still in the Big 12, which is, like you said, not the same conference as the SEC. And getting to the SEC, it's obviously going to make their resume look better, but you're not going to get to the college football playoff against teams like Alabama and Georgia unless you can recruit like those programs, which I don't think they have just yet. But I think the only coaches that could take over this Oklahoma program would be coaches of Lincoln Riley's caliber or higher. And I don't know if there's really any other coaches that are out there that can do that. I thought Lincoln Riley would have been the guy to lead them into the SEC. Now I don't know who could possibly take that. Does Bob Stoops come out of retirement? I honestly have no idea, but I'm really intrigued to see who they get, if they go internal like they usually do, or if they try to make a big move like LSU did with Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, he's another name that we can talk about as well. But since we're still talking about Riley, I mean, he brought over four staff members from Oklahoma. You're looking at defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, wide receiver coach Dennis Simmons, director of football operations Clark Stroud, and director of sports performance Benny Wiley. So, I mean, and I believe he said in his introductory press conference that those guys hopped on the plane without contracts. So they were just all on board. And that just, cuts out more of the work for the Oklahoma staff when they kind of look at things. But I feel like I don't want to say it's beneficial, but the fact that they're not playing for a Big 12 title kind of gives them a little bit more wiggle room here. The fact that, things are going on with the bowl games and everything. But obviously it's not on track where they want it in Oklahoma. But yeah, I think that would be it'll be interesting to see who takes that role. The coaching carousel is just so wild. So many names getting thrown around. You talked about Brian Kelly. You want to pivot to him, or is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with Lincoln Riley and this move in SC?
Yeah, I think Brian Kelly, that one shocked me a lot because I feel like his name has been thrown around kind of in the coaching carousel for a couple of years now, but it never seemed plausible that he would leave Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's kind of similar in that Oklahoma wheelbarrow where they're kind of in that college football, playoff realm. I mean, even they could still make it this year if, Cincinnati loses, Alabama loses, Michigan loses. They would need a lot, but they're not completely out of it. And next year they're supposed to have a lot of talent coming in too. I think at one point they had the number one class for the SI All-American rankings. I think at one point they might have, or they were up there. And so this is not, a program that, I would think Brian Kelly would leave. And you look at LSU, they still have a lot of talent. It's the SEC, the big appeal, Death Valley. I'm really surprised by this one. But I think the SEC is even better now. I think LSU is going to be better. Obviously they had a ton of injuries this year, so I expect them to be better next year. I expected them to be better regardless. But I mean, now you look at like Oklahoma with LSU getting Brian Kelly, that makes it even harder for Oklahoma because now you have LSU who's going to get a lot of recruits looking their way too. So yeah, SEC is absolutely loaded. It's a super conference, even without Oklahoma and Texas getting there just yet. But yeah, it's crazy. I didn't expect Brian Kelly to leave, especially after all the comments about the fairy godmother has to come down and, give me 250 mil or whatever it was. I think he got 95 million. But that must be enough for Baton Rouge.
Man, sorry, I lost you there for a second, Dylan. My Wi-Fi is playing games on me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see you glitching a little bit, but yeah, I can hear you.
All right, yeah. So there were some of your points about Brian Kelly that I was able to gather from my Wi-Fi freaking out on me. But yeah, he was a move that was really surprising for me as well, because he had so much success. That, man, my Wi-Fi the bars were going. Hopefully it can bear with me and we can keep going on this live stream. Sorry about that, folks that are watching on the stream. But yeah, it's just you talk about the fairy godmother comments and the resources that he'll have at LSU. I'm sure will be pretty crazy. I'd be curious to see how those stack up with Notre Dame, because that's obviously one of the storied programs in all of college football. I wonder if Brian Kelly was wondering himself, just with the whole playoff conversation, does it make sense to make this move now because he wants to get into the best conference in college football, and how much Notre Dame being independent could potentially hurt them, as we look towards Selection Sunday after conference championship this week. Do you think that might have played a role in his decision-making, just the fact that you go to the best conference in college football and, maybe give yourself a better shot at the playoffs just off of that?
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, I definitely think that's a big factor. In his career, I think he's gone 5-5 in bowl games. When it comes to BCS, college football playoff, all that kind of stuff, New Year's Six bowls, Notre Dame has not done well with Brian Kelly as their coach. And I think in order to kind of get a better resume, because obviously Notre Dame, as an independent, you're going to schedule a lot of teams from all over. They play their Armies and Navies, they play Stanford, USC. It's kind of all over the place. On paper this year, it looked like their schedule was good enough, but their best win right now, I think, is against Wisconsin, and they're not even in the rankings anymore. So, I mean, for sure that when you're in the SEC, your schedule is going to be loaded. You're going to be playing against the best, arguably 2-3 teams in the country with Georgia and Alabama every year. So, or every other year, I guess. So, I think that's the perfect way to prove that you're an elite level coach, is to go to the SEC and start winning games there. And this is a good program to do it. LSU, had a couple down years last year and this year, but if they're healthy and they keep getting, the recruits that they're getting and they will get with Brian Kelly now, I think the future is super bright for LSU.
You look at the recruiting ramifications of this move. Let's start with the positives for Brian Kelly. I mean, just being in Louisiana, you're going to have a big leg up. You're not having there's no in-state recruiting competition as far as other schools in Louisiana. Sure, some of those other SEC schools are going to be coming in to Louisiana. You got your Bamas and your Georgias, and those are going to be hard battles to win. But I think just the talent in Louisiana versus Indiana, you're taking a significant step up. I think that'll be really big. So that's obviously something to be aware of for Kelly. But I had a tweet yesterday actually, just after this news broke, that was kind of thinking about Oregon's class and what's going on with recruiting. There are a lot of Oregon targets that are in that Notre Dame 2022 class. Chief among them has to be Jalen Sneed, linebacker from Hilton Head, South Carolina. He was a guy that Oregon prioritized getting on campus early after the recruiting dead period was lifted. And when I spoke with him, he was really high on the Ducks. But obviously, you're looking at Notre Dame, a program that's had a lot more success than Oregon, developing linebackers and getting them to the league. And that's a huge part of the formula that these guys are often thinking about when they're making their college football decisions. And then you also have Niuafe Tui Halamaka, who's a Southern California guy. So I know he was tweeting. He was pretty, surprised about the move. I think it was just like a wow or something. But there's him. And then you have cornerback Benjamin Morrison from Arizona. Jaden Mickey, also a corner from Corona Centennial in Southern California. Wide receiver Tobias Merriweather from the Pacific Northwest, actually. Big name wide receiver. I believe he's out of Camas, Washington. And then C.J. Williams, modern day wide receiver. So there's definitely a lot of guys that maybe Oregon could circle back around on. But I think that's why we have to watch so closely to see who they name as the interim, or if because they still haven't named an interim, I don't believe, as of this show, or who they end up promoting. Maybe they promote within, because you look at Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator there. That's kind of the direction that a lot of people are looking right now. But I don't know. I feel like the weirdest thing with all of this is obviously how it popped off so early, and then how it's happening with early signing period just a little bit of ways away.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame with the coaching thing. I mean, Marcus Freeman, I think, is probably the obvious choice. I know a lot of people are throwing Luke Fickell's name around, the Cincinnati head coach. I've even seen Pat Narduzzi at Pitt, his name getting thrown around. So I would expect them to go with Marcus Freeman, just because, it's an internal hire. Notre Dame doesn't usually go outside a whole lot. I think they did do that with Brian Kelly, but it's not something that a program like that usually does. But I mean, Marcus Freeman has proven that he can coach a team. He's, a very defensive minded coach. I think he would definitely do a great job. Luke Fickell. Now, who knows with the carousel, because, we've already seen so many, I didn't think it would happen kind of moves. So maybe Luke Fickell would take that if offered. But honestly, I think with the direction that Cincinnati's going, I don't see him jumping ship now. But yeah, I think in terms of recruiting, Notre Dame, when I've talked to some recruits back over the summer, a lot of it was just, it was a lot about the history of the program. And, it was a lot about Brian Kelly and just, kind of bringing it back to its glory. And I think it's a little bit tougher when you're not in a conference and you don't get to play, the Alabamas and the Georgias every single year. Even Ole Miss is on the rise. So I think for Brian Kelly, recruiting in the SEC, yeah, it's tougher when you're going up against, Alabama and Georgia, and even Tennessee gets really good recruiting classes as well. But like you said, Louisiana is a very underrated state when it comes to recruiting, and especially, a lot of top tier talent. And usually with Louisiana, they stay home. Unlike, California, it's such a huge state, so many top talent schools, they kind of go everywhere.
Definitely. We got let's see, we got some questions here in the chat. This one's coming from Trello, just asking about players that Oregon could kind of pick up from all this craziness, or players that maybe we think that Oregon should be targeting. I mean, there's been so many people in the transfer portal, it's hard to pick off any, just a couple little names here. But I think one of them, I don't know how much of a chance they would have, but Oklahoma wide receiver Jaden Hazelwood, I feel like you got to think that he's going to be rejoining Riley at SC. But he's a big name wide receiver in Oregon. You can never have too many talented wide receivers, so I feel like he would be someone that would maybe make some sense. Rattler was a guy that was kind of early linked to Oregon, and there's reports out there that about Oregon maybe pursuing him. Personally, I don't think that's the move. I mean, I feel like, just based on guys change obviously, but I was watching QB1 and I just didn't feel like he was the best teammate. So I don't feel like he's much of a culture builder, and I could be totally wrong there. But man, it's just super crazy. What do you think about? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hazelwood was the name that when I saw him enter the transfer portal, I was kind of thinking Oregon right away too. A very talented receiver that I think got underutilized quite a bit at Oklahoma, which, granted, that was kind of going to happen because they had so much talent at that receiver position that kind of somebody was going to get lost in the mix. But I think he's definitely one I would look at. To the Rattler thing, I don't like that either necessarily. And I think it's because you already have Ty Thompson, you have Robbie Ashford, Jay Butterfield. Like, there are pieces there. And I think Ty Thompson is the future of the Oregon program. And I just feel like taking somebody from the outside that you already kind of expect to win the job, like Rattler, I feel like a lot of people would expect him to win the job. I just feel like it doesn't show faith in your young quarterbacks that you brought in and you developed and recruited, and that you said this team will be yours, I'm assuming was probably the message to Ty Thompson. I just think it's kind of a slap in the face to bring in a quarterback like that at this point. So I think Ty Thompson deserves to be, the clear-cut number one guy for next year. I wouldn't even consider bringing in a grad transfer or any other
Oh
quarterback that
man.
hits the transfer portal. Yeah, I think Ty Thompson should be it. I don't think they should let quarterback at all. But receiver, even if Marvin Mims gets into the transfer portal, if that's a legit thing, shoot, I would prioritize him because he is a future NFL receiver for sure.
Because he just came over from Miami, right? So he'd have to stay. He'd have to sit because that'd be his second move, right? Or am I thinking of someone else?
You might be thinking of Charleston Rambo, who went to Miami.
Oh, okay. I know. I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Total brain fart. But to your point about the quarterback transfers, I mean, that is the last thing that I would want to see, especially a grad transfer quarterback, because it feels like other than if you look at the quarterback picture at Oregon, I feel like this is something I'm pretty passionate about, just like the way that it's kind of gone. You have Vernon Adams and Dakota Prukop coming in after Marcus, and then you have Herbert, and then you have Tyler Shuck, who was only, a year, and then he left, and then you have Brown, who's only going to be a year. It feels like there hasn't been a quarterback that this program has really targeted and then brought in and developed and seen it all through, in a while now. So I would really not like to see that the 1-year rental deal. I mean, Herbert obviously played multiple years, but I feel like just with the way recruiting goes, he wasn't this is our guy, plan A, like we have to get him. And, part of that probably goes to him just being so under recruited. But I think that would, I wouldn't want to see that at all. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think I want to see Ty or any of these other guys on the roster get a shot. We got some questions rolling in. So I want to tackle some of these as far as, let's see, just getting some of these answered. Let's see, Quack Attack 49er. Any chance that Cristobal and Miami rumors have any validity? I think there was a report out earlier today about Manny Diaz maybe staying in Miami. I think that was from On3. So I think the nice thing about the carousel, if you want to call it that, is, one of the guys that got hired we haven't even talked about is Billy Napier at Florida, and then obviously Brian Kelly at LSU. I feel like to a degree that, those are some of the jobs that, those big SEC jobs, those are the big ones that I think maybe fans would probably be the most concerned about, that Cristobal would consider leaving for potentially. So, I mean, I also just have a hard time looking at Miami, looking at the situation there, how the on-field product has looked. Other than playing at his alma mater, I'm not sure what Oregon offers what Miami offers Cristobal that Oregon can't offer right now.
Aside from money, maybe? Yeah, I don't
location.
know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because his family's there. It's his hometown. I get that. That's a natural thing that people are going to draw conclusions to. Honestly, yeah, I don't think that this is a program that Mario Cristobal would be drawn towards rebuilding. Now, I'm not going to say I don't have faith in his words, but we've seen a lot of head coaches like Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly. That's a lot of things where they say, I'm staying here, I'm staying put. I'm going to lead this program. You're going to be, you're going to be coached by me. This is all going to happen. Nothing's going to change. I don't think Mario Cristobal is one of those coaches where he would say something and then pull a Willie Taggart and leave. I do think he's going to stick around. I think the only job, and it's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but I think the only job that would scare me if I was an Oregon fan about Cristobal leaving for would be Alabama if Nick Saban was to retire, because obviously he, worked with Alabama, was an assistant there. I think he would definitely be one of their top choices. Now, Alabama, I don't know if there's a more coveted head coaching job that would be open in sports than Alabama football. But I think that would be the only one where I could see him actually having serious interest. But in terms of the Miami rumors having validity, I would say just ignore those. I don't think there's any validity to those.
All right, we got another one here. Guys, please give me your take on what happened in Salt Lake City. Utes aren't 30 points better than Oregon. Question coming from Sam Kim. Sam, thanks for the question. Thanks for tuning into the stream. Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about this post game, Dylan, and it was kind of hard to figure out much to talk about because it was just I was kind of just shook about how ugly of a game that was. And to a degree, I feel like it was, the situation, like the best possible day for Utah and the worst possible day for Oregon. I think the biggest thing that I kind of think about with that one is the fact that Utah realized how one-dimensional Oregon's offense has been all year, and they sat back and they said, okay, we're going to make Anthony Brown beat us with his arm. And that especially was what happened with the game script. When you look at how quickly they got out to a lead, that's kind of what I saw happen. They said, hey, we got to make them, we got to take away the run and make them beat us through the air. And obviously Oregon, they couldn't get it done in that regard. And this was also the same week that they were coming off losing 2 wideouts, and Johnny Johnson and Jalen Redd. So that didn't make it any easier.
Well, I don't even think Utah took away the run. I don't even think Oregon was running the ball. That was one thing that I was most confused by. And I think when it comes to, the Utah game, I think running the ball has definitely been a strength, obviously, of Oregon's. But I think that's something where Utah was a little bit more vulnerable than people thought. Like outside of Devin Lloyd, I think I like Oregon's chances at running and attacking that Utah defense, honestly. And when you look at the Pac-12 championship history, the last couple years of Oregon, I think that two things that I really want to see that we didn't see much of in that game a couple weeks ago is a little bit of offensive creativity in the play calling and Kayvon Thibodeau. Look at Kayvon Thibodeau's history in Pac-12 championship games. He won the MVP against USC last year, and he had, I believe, 2.5 sacks against Utah in 2019. And then look at the offensive play calling in those last two. In 2020, Anthony Brown came out of nowhere and started throwing touchdowns. And there was a little bit, difference with the run game as well, and Anthony Brown's ability to do that. And then in 2019, you saw Justin Herbert run all of a sudden. And then obviously in the Rose Bowl, we know what happened there. So I think for Oregon to kind of catch Utah off guard, just obviously don't be different than who you are. Like don't play, something that's not Oregon football. That was one thing that I don't remember who said it during a press conference, but they said we can't be, who we're not. We have to be who we are. But I do think some offensive, creativity and play calling would definitely catch Utah off guard, and I think would give Oregon a really good chance because they have so much talent. And now with, like you said, Johnny Johnson, Jalen Redd getting injured, there's so much talent that they can use in so many different ways that I think that can serve them well against Utah, especially against the secondary that, has been banged up. But and then Kayvon. I mean, how do you defend Kayvon? But Utah was doing a pretty good job of it a couple weeks ago. So I think those are the big two factors that I think Oregon could use to get revenge.
And then you also have to think about, some of the injury updates that we got. Noah Sewell left in the second half and didn't return against Oregon State. Mikael Wright, same deal. Mark Cristobal said on Monday that they're good to go for this week. But yeah, I mean, you just think about guys other than KT that are just so central to this the defense, and kind of what they bring to the table, especially with Utah's physical brand of football, covering the tight ends. That's obviously something that gave Oregon some fits. The Utah tight ends were really, really effective the last time that they played. But I'm right there with you, Dylan. They got to, know what they are, who they are, what works well for them. And yeah, I mean, I was kind of there with you with thinking about, okay, why are they kind of going away from the run? But to a degree, I feel like that was because they got down so quickly and they were kind of forced to, like, okay, hey, we take a step back. Like, we need chunk plays. We need to score quickly. And then the best way to do that is through the air. But that hasn't been who they are this season. Mm-hmm. So that goes back to your point, just about trying to, stick with what's been working. And I think that, they got dominated at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. Cam Rising had he didn't have, not every throw was amazing, but I feel like for the most part, he was able to kind of do his thing, sit back in the pocket. And then you guys just slow down Tavion Thomas this time around because he had a field day on that Oregon defense.
Yeah, Tavion Thomas is a monster. I think he's going to get his. But, this past week, you saw what this Oregon run defense is capable of, slowing down BJ Baylor. I don't think he ripped off a run of maybe more than 10 yards that I saw. That was a really impressive performance by the Oregon run defense. I think a lot of that is going to be needed against Utah. But Utah, like you said, I mean, they're just crazy physical up front. But so was Oregon State. That's what impressed me, and that's what kind of shocked me was, when we talked after the Utah game, you said Utah out-physicaled Oregon. That was something that kind of caught on. And I think Oregon State is, not that far behind in terms of physicality up front, but, Oregon showed their dominance up front on both sides against Oregon State. And so I think one of the other key factors on top of the ones that I mentioned were, definitely win the line of scrimmage this time, because I think it'll help you in the run game. It'll help, Anthony Brown in the long run have more time to get the ball out and kind of go through his progressions. And then on defense, you have to get Cameron Rising out of the pocket, or else he's going to find his, wide open tight end in the middle. The tight end thing was, it happened against Oregon State too, with Luke Musgrave kind of running all over the place. So I definitely think that's a concern for Oregon. But now that they have film, this team isn't any different from 2 weeks ago. I think there's a lot for Oregon to learn about how they performed, in Salt Lake City.
Got another question here from Nick. You think we might land 5-star wide receiver Kevin Coleman between us and Florida State? That's a really interesting question, especially with the way that the wide receiver position has kind of shifted for the Ducks here in recent weeks. I just spoke with Darius Clemens a little over an hour ago and asked him about that Oregon visit, and I think it went really well. His parents really liked it. Got to spend some time with BMAC, and I don't want to give away too much on the live stream because that's an update that I want to write. So keep an eye out for that update. Should be coming out tomorrow morning. But I think they're in great shape with him, case in point. But with Kevin Coleman, I mean, that was a guy who was out here for the Washington State game, I believe. And I know that the staff put a ton of effort into that, that visit. It's when he was out here at SNL. I mean, I was out there, on the turf, seeing how, just taking everything in, and he had a staff member right with him like that, because he didn't play in the camp. He was out here on a visit, and I think that went well. But similar deal when he came out for that visit recently here in Eugene. They had someone there the whole time, but I think the wild card. So I mean, I think that they do have a good chance. He's one of those guys that I've been trying to get in touch with to see what really he's thinking about the whole process and the schools that are coming after him. But he took a visit to USC, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I wonder, I don't know if that was an official visit. I think it was, because there was a graphic for it. But the whole deal that makes this interesting with the timing of the Riley hire, you got to think that makes them even more appealing for skill guys, is if you're in a situation like USC and you get a new head coach, then that gives you essentially a bonus visit, official visit, I should say, because that way you actually know who is running the program. So I do think, for the most part, it was between Oregon and Florida State for a while, especially with him saying all the things about, dream school and all of that. But I think I'd keep an eye out for USC being kind of a wild card here in that one, in that recruitment. So that's kind of just what I have to say about Coleman. He's someone I want to get some more intel on and hopefully get on the phone. Anything you wanted to say about that, Dylan?
Yeah, Kevin's definitely been elusive. I remember trying to get a hold of him over the summer too. But yeah, he's definitely a highly touted. I mean, he's top 5 receiver in the 2022 class. From Missouri. I think that would be a really, really good pickup for Oregon, is to get their feet down in, kind of that Midwest area, the Missouri area, and start kind of building your pipeline there. Florida State, yeah, I would say, if I had to guess based on what I've read and kind of heard, I would say Florida State probably has a slight edge. I do think with Oregon having, obviously Micah Pittman leaving the program, and then Nicholas Anderson flipping, and Isaiah Satania flipping, I feel like they are kind of a little bit more locked into that wide receiver position. So I wouldn't be surprised if their pitch is a little bit more fine-tuned to Kevin Coleman, being like, hey, there's more of a spot for you now. There's more room for you now. You don't have to fight for a roster, or not a roster spot, but, kind of playing time. But yeah, like you said, USC is right there too. And I feel like with any, person that is in the 2022 class that even considered USC, like you said, now they're kind of looking like, okay, Lincoln Riley's here. This is a guy that's won, 4 straight Big 12 championships, been to 3 college football playoffs, developed Heisman quarterbacks. Like, this guy can win and this guy can develop. And this is Hollywood. It's, USC. So I definitely think he's going to kind of take a look at it a little bit more if he wasn't already. So I definitely wouldn't count out USC too, but I do like Oregon's chances, given what I've read and seen so far. But yeah, I definitely want you to get a hold of him because he's been one we've been trying to get a hold of for a long time.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, we got about 5 more minutes here on the show. I know, Dylan, you got to bounce for some other obligations. So if you have any more questions, make sure to throw them in here, and hopefully we can tackle them. This one I know you're pretty passionate about, Dylan, so we can throw it up here. For a question from Trello. Jake Haener, transfer portal. That's the big news, one of the biggest names of the day, especially after the DeBoer hire. It's just crazy how we're seeing, so many players follow coaches, but at the same time, it's not that crazy. It totally makes sense, but just the fact that the landscape has changed so much.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've gone on for 40 minutes. We haven't even talked about Kalen DeBoer going to UW yet. That's kind of crazy, just how much has gone on. So yeah,
we'll see if it happens.
Yeah,
not confirmed yet.
Yeah, that's true. I do love the hire for UW though. As much as people like to give them junk for the Jimmy Lake hire and how that went down, I think this is a very quality hire. I love what DeBoer has been doing at Fresno State the last couple years. Now, obviously, it would have been great for them to get to the Mountain West Championship, but man, Jake Haener played his butt off this year. That dude he's got a heart of gold. He's a warrior out there. Dude's got a lot of arm talent. For him to come back to UW potentially, allegedly, is kind of what a lot of people were saying. That would be big for them because obviously, Dylan Morris just was not it for them this year. Sam Heward's still there. Obviously, you only have the one start under his belt, and he didn't perform well. So, but I still think he's got a lot of talent. Bringing Jake Haener in, though, I feel like he would win that job when he was there before, because Jake Haener transferred to Fresno State from UW a couple years ago. So, I think it would be a huge get for them to get Jake Haener. Dude has a lot of talent, and I think they would definitely maximize all of that receiving talent that they have.
It would certainly make that Oregon-Washington game that much more competitive. You talk about momentum, getting a big name like that. Obviously it wasn't a huge name recruit, but that doesn't, went to Washington. It would be crazy that it would come back to Washington. Let's see. We have one more question in here from Micah Time. Micah Pittman could have been the next Jalen Red. Both had dog mentality. Yeah, I was a huge Micah fan. Before he announced his departure from the program, he was if you've been following me for a bit, I was kind of banging on the drum for Brandon Dorlus becoming this next face along the defensive line, and in a similar vein, I was really thinking that Micah Pittman was the guy that needed to be getting more touches for Oregon, and he was just a big play wide receiver in high school, and I feel like every time he got the ball at Oregon, I feel like good things happened. You think about that touchdown that he caught against Iowa State that was called back because of a holding call. That was tough. But no slight to Jalen Red, but I think Micah Pittman could have been even better if he stayed. But who knows? It's all hypotheticals now. Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah, I loved Micah Pittman when they actually used him. I think the dude played with a ton of energy. Obviously, was super talented. I hate to see him get underutilized. I think he only had a dozen catches this season. So, that's really tough for him. We definitely saw flashes. I just wish we would have saw it more consistently. And, he kind of would have become a more wide receiver 1 or 2. But if I had to say the next Jalen Red on this roster, might be a stretch. I might actually say Seven McGee with the way that they've been talking about him with the slot. Very similar size, same height, a little bit bigger build, crazy speed, energy. I think he's got that dog mentality too. So, look out for Seven McGee these last couple of weeks. I feel like we could definitely see him be a big part of the offense and in special teams these last couple of games.
Seven is awesome. We talked to him today just about his position switch and kind of how that's been going for him. And he was talking about how he came to Oregon to play in games like this, the Pac-12 championship against Utah. Last question for us here, Dylan. Sam, I think he might have asked this earlier, so sorry we didn't get to it, but or someone else said it, but Sam says you guys need to say something about the remote chance that Oregon is the 4th team in the playoffs, looking at the rankings and see the number 2, 3, and 4 teams losing. Just saying. Someone else asked me about this the other day, I think on Twitter, and it's definitely something, it's kind of like a outside shot, crazy consideration right now. You look at the top 4, you got Georgia, Michigan, Bama, and Cincy. And especially with Bama playing Georgia this week, a lot of people are looking at Georgia as the overwhelming favorite in that game. And I think that it's a good point to consider for sure. But I mean, so yeah, you figure that if Bama loses, they're probably not going to go. Oregon coming in at number 10, but I still feel like you put a Big 12 champion in potentially over Oregon, unless Oregon just beats the brakes off of Utah. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what has to happen for this kind of a situation to come to fruition, right?
Yeah, I think both Baylor and Oklahoma State being above Oregon kind of hurts. I don't see them getting that big of a jump, even if they absolutely, blow out Utah. I don't see it happen because you have to think about Stanford, that whole loss. And I mean, obviously the Ohio State win looks good, but the Stanford loss, I don't even think Stanford's won since that game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously they were healthy, no Joe Moorhead, blah, blah, blah. You can, go on with that as you will. But, and then getting, blown out by Utah, I just don't, I wouldn't put too much into it. I would say just take the Pac-12 championship, take a potential Rose Bowl if Oregon gets past Utah, and just, call it good. Because that's still a successful season in my mind. But obviously, as I've mentioned several times, the standard should be higher, but that's for another show.
Definitely. Well, yeah, something to watch here with the newest rankings coming out. Oregon's at the number 10 spot, so kind of still very much on the outside looking in. And I feel like that that second loss really kind of just took all the wind out of their sails. But if you're watching in the stream, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. It's free, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any time we're going live. Trying to do more of these more often, and I'll announce kind of when those are happening on the Ducks Digest Facebook page at Ducks Digest or on my Twitter at mtorresports. Dylan, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DRK Sports News. I'm posting stuff on Ducks Digest all the time, and I'm also doing a lot of things right now with the Transfer Portal CFB. You can find us at TPortalCFB on Twitter and the TransferPortalCFB.com.
Right on. Well, hoping to maybe do another live stream tomorrow, or if not in the very near future. Got a Utah preview show that I'm working on, so preview podcast. We'll see which one I want to do, but that's it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Be well, and we'll see you guys in the next one.